During my doctoral research, one of the depressing things that I read was a piece of research by Catherine Tyler. She is the professor anthropology, I think at Exeter University. And over 20 years, she did 3 pieces of ethnographic research in Leicestershire, where she embedded herself in a community, and she was looking at how white people viewed what she called Britasians, so British Asians. What I found most disturbing about the book was her third piece of research, where she was looking at younger people's views. So she's looking at people in their teens and early 20s. And as she, the research was done by her just being a part of the community and listening to conversation and prompting conversation. So she found that people in that age group were quite critical of their parents as racists and the way their parents viewed Asians. However, as she dug underneath the surface, she found that these people, in her view, in her judgment, were just as racist as her parents, just as othering of British Asians as their parents. They just dressed it up in different language and with different concepts. So the fact that we have more multi-ethnic community, meaning that we have more people from different ethnicities, a higher proportion of them in our society, does not by itself lead to racial justice. There has to be other stuff that goes on as well. And if we think that simply because we've got more people, or even a majority of people in the context that come from other ethnicities, means we've got racial justice, we are deluded.
That was proven when we had the COVID situation, isn't it? I mean, how many more people of, black or brown, whatever you want to call it, doctors, nurses, workers, how many more of them died? How many more of them worked on the front line? So it isn't just about equal treatment because, or rather, we want to bring in more of these people. It is about how do you treat those people? Are they being treated equally to their white counterpart?
Yeah, it's about it, and when we talk about equal treatment as well, that's very much embedded in law, isn't it? The Equalities Act. What we're not talking about is equity, and such a big difference between equal treatment and equity, isn't it? I was on a call, actually. You just reminded me. I was on a call, well, 2 calls, Zoom meetings during COVID. And with nurses from the NHS, and it was the Black Nurses Association. And there were something like 140 people on that call, on that Zoom meet. And what came across very, very strongly is these nurses were talking about how they had been pulled from their wards to go and work on COVID wards. They weren't objecting to it, but what they were objecting to was the disproportionate number of them that were being pulled. In fact, some Filipino nurses actually said that they had been threatened that their contracts would be terminated if they didn't go onto the COVID wards. And that was at the time when PPE, we didn't even have the correct PPE. They were talking about wearing black plastic bags, rubbish bags, and cutting them to put them over their uniforms to go on these wards. So, this idea that more people will make some sort of positive difference, historically, that's proven never to be true. We already know that historically. There is no example in history where that has actually proven to be real or to be true. It just doesn't exist. And the issue as well with that is, once again, the burden of eliminating or addressing racism is placed on Black and brown people who are the oppressed and eliminated and othered group. As if, okay, well, now we've got more of you here. Now you can now change us, i.e. the majority group. So therefore, in this context, in this country, people of white ethnicity. And that excuses, where is that racism coming from, and how is that racism playing out when those who are oppressed, I say something, and I say it very frequently when I speak. There is something deeply perverse in expecting those who are oppressed or excluded to be the architects of eliminating their oppression or exclusion.
Yes, I mean, if I may, just on the point, South Africa is a good example. Until white people all over the world decided that that apartheid was not just, but not only thinking about it, but committing themselves to do something about it, Nelson Mandela would not have been released from prison. And I think part of the reality for us, and we've been talking most of today about what really needs to be done, and I have to say, across those years, just pointing backward, as we look at Britain and Northern Ireland and Ireland, there are many, many white people across these four nations who are as committed to fighting racial justice as we are, as black people are. And I think that needs to be said and recognized, because ultimately, in my view anyway, however we get to the place that we are all seeking to get to, we cannot get there alone. So you're right. The fact of the matter is, how do we work together to bring about those sorts of changes where the power structures are absolutely dominated by white people? I remember Stephen Wright saying in one of his books that God gave us dominion over the earth, but we being a white people have taken dominion over each other. And not only that, we have actually prosecuted a process that reinforces that dominion over black and brown people. And so my sense is that, yes, let us continue to fight, but there's something about our suffering that emerges in conversations like this. And over again, we are highlighting our suffering, all of our suffering. But doesn't that just keep us, at least notionally, in the position that we have come to adopt or have been made to adopt? So let our suffering, I want to say, be the catalyst for enabling change right across the board, however that change comes about. And I think in Ireland, both North and South, in England and in Scotland, there are forces at work who are determined to block that we are not equal, we have been your enslavers, so we cannot be equal with you. That lies within so much of what we see as the mechanism for rejecting black and brown people.
It's also within the psyche of black people. They have been brainwashed to feel that they're inferior. I mean, they don't even realize that they're at a place where it's not, they see it as respect, but it's almost as if, you know what, I don't know enough, or I am not good enough. I need to go to that person, or he or she who is white, he or she will know better. And they will not just know better, as it were, but they will know better for me. So I'm never up there yet.
Yes, I would dearly love to think and believe that equality will develop and emerge in a mighty way as black people and people of colour spread themselves to the shires and all over, because it's happening. I mean, yes, I remember when we first spoke about Race Justice Sunday, it was about, we don't have any black people over here, so we don't have to look at it. I mean, and likewise, a number of things. For me, it's recognising that I would love to be able to believe and think that if my grandchildren move to the shires, they are going to feel and be part of that community without thinking somebody's going to play something against me which is about racism, it's going to be about injustice. But we recognise, in reality, as been said, it's here. I believe the question about the poor is always going to be with us. Jesus said that. We are reminded in Scripture a question, who is my neighbour? A question that will continue to be asked, you know, and the response is very much there biblically. So for me, I think it's sad that we are, you know, we are being very positive about alleviating racism and race injustice. But on the other hand, we recognise that it is here and it is here to stay for a long, long time. So yes, beautiful to think as we move and have moved for many, many years, that a respect of our, you know, of Black people, people of colour, will be there within our respective community, but it isn't. And for me, it's about, will the state protect me? We know for a fact that the state probably won't protect us if there's injustice, and the playing out of that injustice is very noted and noticeable. Yeah, it is sad. I mean, I would just love to believe that as a Black person, if I went somewhere and community diversity is there, I would love to think that the respect of our people will be there. But in my heart, I think it's delusional.